Good morning. Thank you for attending this morning's press conference. I'm here today to talk with you about the transportation proposal, commonly referred to as Hillsborough County Referendum 2, that will be on the ballot this November. Specifically, I would like to address what I perceive as a lack of transparency on what is being disseminated about this measure. It is apparent to me that there is lots of misinformation out there, and I want to be sure that the voters know what they're voting on this November. Let me start by saying that I acknowledge that we have a problem here in Hillsborough County as it relates to transportation. In fact, I have been a part of efforts to improve our transportation system. These efforts have included appropriating record funding for transportation, increasing fees on developers, and advocating for better growth management here in Hillsborough County. But clearly, more needs to be done, and the status quo is not acceptable. Many citizens have likely reached a point where they say to themselves that they're willing to pay additional taxes to solve this problem, and I empathize with this. I have no doubt that this initiative was put in place with good intentions, but because of its hasty preparation, it has many fundamental flaws. As I have visited with citizens across suburban and rural Hillsborough County, it is clear to me that most are not aware of some critically important information about this proposal. I'd like to begin by stating that this proposal calls for a sales tax increase in Hillsborough County from 7 cents per dollar to 8 cents per dollar. This amounts to an increase in the sales tax of over 14%. If this tax passes, Hillsborough County will be tied for the highest sales tax rate in the state of Florida. There's also a proposed half-cent school tax, which is a separate initiative on the November ballot. If both the transit tax and the school tax pass, Hillsborough County will have the highest sales tax rate in the state of Florida outright. And this proposal calls for this tax to be levied for 30 years. This is not your garden variety transit sales tax initiative. This proposal seeks to embed this tax in the Hillsborough County Charter, which is like our local constitution. And it doesn't call for just the tax increase. It would give an independent committee whose members would not be responsible or accountable to you, the citizen, authority to spend these funds. Furthermore, the ballot language paves the way for this committee to be stacked with members that are not from the areas where the majority of these taxes will be paid. This initiative also imposes strict limitations on how this money could be spent, with no projects identified and with no way to alter course if the transportation needs of the county change. The most important thing that I'd like to point out this morning is that this new tax revenue cannot be spent on added road capacity, defined as the widening of roads and the building of new roads. This would be expressly prohibited as part of this initiative. This is worth repeating. The widening of roads and the building of new roads with these funds is expressly prohibited as part of this plan. This is an initiative that by and large will not benefit suburban and rural commuters. 73% of Hillsborough County residents live outside the city of Tampa. Suburban and rural residents expecting added road capacity, if this passes, simply will not get it because of this prohibition. This initiative amounts to a Trojan horse for downtown interests at the expense of 73% of Hillsborough County residents. Now, I'm not ordinarily one to stand in the way of a citizen-driven initiative, and if this truly had something for everyone in the county, I might not have been critical of this measure. I likely would not have supported it, but I would not have been vocally critical. Saying that, I could no longer stand on the sidelines, seeing that there is so much misinformation out there. Now, I know that misleading campaign advertising is not a new concept. I know that we've all seen a campaign ad or two that contains some misleading information. But I see a real lack of transparency in the way the campaign for this measure is being run. This initiative should be voted up or down on its merits. And again, I want to make sure that citizens are armed with all the facts. The 73% of residents that live outside the city of Tampa would see very little in return for this initiative at the expense of downtown interests, and that's just wrong. That concludes my remarks, and I'll now take any questions. Yes?
Hi, Sharon Calvert with I Own Tampa Bay. So at this point, what caused you to come out now at this time to make your statement? And what do you see happening either or? If it passes, could there be a repeal activity that occurs? Or if it doesn't pass, what would you then do?
Well, of course, I'm not an attorney, but I see some things in here that trouble me with respect to the constitutionality of what's contained in here. So I certainly think you could see legal challenges, but I've talked to so many folks that have no idea, number one, that this even involves a tax, but secondly, that adding road capacity by means of widening roads and building new roads is expressly prohibited as a part of this plan. So I just don't want to see suburban and rural commuters get hoodwinked and think, okay, I relent, I'll pay this tax, then I can see some roads widened. They would be sadly mistaken, because that would not be allowed under this plan.
Mark Calvert, IOnTampaBay.com. One of the things that hasn't gotten much publicity is the likely significant impact on mobility fees through the sales tax increase. Can you address what the likely impact of that will be? Because that is something that from downtown to Lithia, people support, developers and new residents paying for the impacts as they move in.
I could certainly see a push to reduce or even eliminate mobility fees if this passes. That was a heavy lift that the county commission took on a couple of years ago, and we did express strong support of developers paying more towards our transportation system. So you bring up a great point.
Another question, sir. We're aware of an alternate plan that's been proposed and actually been approved by the Board of County Commissioners and sent to the Citizens Advisory Committee for further consideration. Do you have any comments on that and what the likelihood of that possibly being considered by the broader Board of County Commissions in the future?
Sure. There is an alternative plan floating around out there. I had made a motion, which was successful, to send it to the Citizens Advisory Committee for further vetting. That is still in the hands of the Citizens Advisory Committee, as I understand it. I can't speak for the other 6 commissioners. It's very difficult to look into a crystal ball and anticipate whether or not that would get traction. But certainly it's moving through the process, which is promising.
Jason Richard from ABC Action News.
Yes, sir.
You said you've spoken to some of the residents and so forth about this initiative that don't know, what you just talked about. What has been the reaction from those people?
They've been surprised, shocked in some cases. I met with a couple gentlemen recently that are engaged in the political process, and they were not even aware that added road capacity is expressly prohibited as part of this plan. That came as quite the surprise, quite the shock to them. So there are definitely a lot of folks that just do not know what this measure contains. This is the complete measure here. It's let's see, double-sided, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages in length, and I just want to urge citizens to make sure that they read and understand what's contained within all 5 of these pages. But Certainly, I think there's been a lack of transparency in the campaign in favor of this. And, I think it's only right for citizens to know what is and isn't in this plan.
And the only thing, if those 5 pages get into the county charter, which I think is only 10 pages today, and adding 5, the only way you could ever change that, right, would be either another amendment to repeal or change it. It would have to go through the same type of process.
That is correct. Transportation tax initiative such as this does not have to be embedded in the county charter. The county charter is a guiding document. It's like our local constitution, and there's just absolutely no reason, to embed all these things in a document such as that. And again, this is about much, much more than a tax request. This is 5 pages of substantive changes to the county charter that would place strict limitations on how these dollars could be spent. And I'm here this morning to say that frankly, it's not in the best interest of your typical suburban commuter.
You mentioned earlier that there may be some challenges or some issues regarding the role of the county commission, and the amendment does seem to provide a lot of power to this independent oversight committee. Do you have, and Florida statute 212.055 specifies very specifically what the role of the county commission is regarding transportation taxes. Do you have any comments on what the role of the county commission will be in the future if this does indeed pass?
As I read this committee would be quite powerful. They would have a lot of clout in the decision-making process. Number one, I question the legality of that, just like you do. But secondly, even to the extent that this would be deemed to be legal through whatever means, you're talking about a committee that has a lot of decision-making authority that's not accountable to the citizens, the voters of Hillsborough County.
Another comment that we received is understanding that transit specifically uses, or the category and sections regarding transit uses very specific legal language to protect transit, essentially make it recession-proof regarding any changes that could be made. It essentially prohibits changes regarding the transit-specific portion of the plan. Do you see that there's any alternatives for any changes, particularly if there's a downturn or new technology is on the horizon, or there's new demands from constituents in the county for transportation solutions?
So as mentioned in my comments during the press conference, this would make it incredibly difficult to alter course should the needs of the county change. To your point, many types of transit systems have a high level of permanency involved with them. It's a lot of front-loaded infrastructure costs and needs, very expensive to maintain, and very difficult to alter course should the county's transportation needs change.
Hillsborough County has over a dozen level of service F roads according to the latest reports from the MPO. Are you aware of any plans to resolve those that are specified in this All for Transportation amendment?
As I see this amendment, I don't see anything in here that would cause a level F road to have its level of service increased.
There's been some discussion that the plan is based upon the MPO long-range transportation plan, and personnel associated with the MPO and the city of Tampa have also spoken at some detail regarding the plan and how it can support the LRTP and other transportation plans. and there is specific funding associated with the amendment for the MPO. Are there any concerns or raised in your mind about the ongoing independence of the MPO to build and identify future plans and needs based upon the entire need of Hillsborough County, or as opposed to aligning what's in this amendment?
I do have concerns as it relates to that, yes. Well, thank you so much for being here this morning, and if you have any further questions, certainly I'm available here in the room afterwards or through my office. Thank you very much.
Thank you.